Greetings, Dumela, Sawubona, Sakpase, Namaste, Upshin, Dubra Otra, Assalamu alaikum, Hotep. It is so great to be here once again. It's great to be here, not just because it is just about the end of 2024, but also because it is Kwanzaa time. It's Kwanzaa time. If you don't know already, it is Kwanzaa time. And so, Habari Gani, Ujima. Today is the day of Ujima, which is collective work and responsibility. We're going to get right into it tonight. Tonight, I am so blessed, honored, and highly favored to have as a returning guest on this show, the Dorial Laria Show. If you don't know, my name is Dorial Inez Laria, and you're at the Dorial Laria Show. We are broadcasting live on YouTube and Facebook, and I think we're also in some other places and spaces. And so I will definitely give some shout outs to people who have done really nice things for this opportunity. Tonight, we're going to be speaking to one of the most well-known scholars in the diaspora. And that is my Baba, that is my teacher, that is my mentor, and that is Professor James Small. If you don't know him, you're going to have to read the bio because we want to make sure that we take this opportunity to sit at his feet digitally, at least, and hear from him and engage with him and discuss the things that pertain to doing this work together. You know, we can work separately as individual fingers, but as somebody said, if you put those fingers together, you can work much more diligently with a mighty fist. And so tonight we are going to be sitting again at the feet of Professor James Small. So let's welcome ye him. Greetings,
Thank you,
sir.
sister. Thank you, Sister Doriel, and your fantastic show, or really university center presentation that's coming forth. So I'm always honored to be with you, and I'm always honored. You know, I've seen your work in the community. I've been to your church facility. I see what you're trying to do for the youth, with the youth. I see what you're trying to do with community institutions in terms of African transformation. I see um, your real hand on the work, you know, and that's what we've got to have more of. We have a lot of historical narrating, and that's good. We need that. We can't let up on that at all. We got to stay in control of our narrative, but we've got to also see practical on hands working to develop community, because at the end of this day, this is not about going to college. This is not about PhDs. This is not about global name or master teacher and all of these things. This is about, can we provide for our community or show them how they can provide food, clothing, shelter, safety, and security? Can we show them how to provide or get control of land, labor, resources where they live? Can we show our community through our historical narrative, through talking about ancestral experiences, how they can get control of the economic, politics, and culture where they live? The bottom line, can I eat? Bottom line, can I have shelter? Bottom line, can I have safety and security? Bottom line for everybody. So all the other stuff that we do, that we get, like people say, oh, Professor Small, oh, can I take a picture with you? I am so embarrassed most of the time because I want to know, did you do something to clean the street today? Did you do something to ensure safety of this block today? Did you do something to go forward and see how we're going to buy a building and open a restaurant, buy a building and open a store, buy a building and train youth how to become plumbers, how to become carpenters, how to become roofers? Because if we're not doing that, the rest of this is just helping imperialism go forward while we're feeling good. And
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely
what
right.
makes
Actually,
it Ujima? And what is Ujima?
collective worker responsibility.
Absolutely. Collective
Collective
work and
worker
responsibility.
responsibility. Excellent.
And at the
Excellent.
end of the day, it's about nation building time, community building time, neighborhood building time, family building time, individual character building time, because that's the genesis that leads to the nation building.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. I need to just take a couple of seconds to give, and I don't know if I think I want to find another word than a shout out, but I don't know what a head nod. You know, I'm from Brooklyn, and so we always like to give
Mhm.
like a little head nod, just a little head nod. And so I have to give a couple of moments of head nods to people who are dear to me, who without them I would not be in this space. And so to my village family, well, first to my mama, and I know my mama's in here somewhere. So hey, shout out, mama. I know you're in here. I know you're watching. So thank you for getting the love and bringing forth me to life. I appreciate you, Sister Phyllis Laria. That's my mama. And then also my big brother. So that would be Brother Kafra and Sister Nizalama and my village family, uh, Brother Mark, Brother Dwayne. They literally carried me to First World Alliance about 30 years ago, 30 plus years ago. And that's where I started sitting at the feet of the people who I consider my elders. And if I call the names, I'd get in trouble. But, you know, Dr. Malefi Asante, uh, uh, of course, Dr. Marilana Karenga, and Francis Rogers Rose, and Haki Marubuti, and Professor Clark, and all the people. And so I just want to, and Arvin Van Sonoma, there's so many names to call. And so I definitely just want to take a moment to mention those people's names, because again, had it not been for them, I would not have been in these places and spaces. Um, so to that group of people, also to some of my current, I want to say family, and those people know who I'm talking about, and that's Brother Taki, who took me on a, a a pilgrimage to Kemet a couple months ago, which expanded my family. And those who know. So shout out to Sister Felicia Harden as well, who you know dearly, and Brother Taki of Aket Tours and the Happy Film, and then to Brother Sean, who I believe just dropped this information into Nubia. Nubia is a new community that I participate in with Professor Greg Carr and Sister Karen Hunter, and I'm saying it publicly. The moment that I could be in their in their space, I will just sit at their feet and gawk. I'm just saying, I will gawk. I will gawk. So this definitely. Oh, and of course to Dr. Julian Malvo, who prayerfully, if we can make it happen, and you know God aligns the stars tomorrow, we may see her in this same space. So Dr. J, I know you're watching, and I pray that we can connect tomorrow for Ujima, which is cooperative economics. And who better than to have Dr. Julian Malvo talk about economics? I'm just saying. So let's definitely delve into this conversation about collective work and responsibility, which Baba definitely I'm turning the paper, because I'm writing notes and taking notes onto you. You definitely have been in the streets, literally and figuratively, not just today, but for weeks, months, and years, doing this work about getting the best minds together and bringing them together and trying to sometimes kind of nudge them gently, and sometimes you may have to verbally kind of beat them over the head to say stop doing it on your own street corner and bring it together into a collective space so we can make it a bigger, we can have a bigger impact. And this is what the show is all about, to bring those inspirational leaders who will inform, influence, and impact other people to live their lives better. So today you actually are just running literally from a Kwanzaa celebration. I'd love to hear a little bit about that. And there are some things that you do where you will be bringing other minds together in order to make those minds greater. I know you have a trip that you do on a regular basis, so we definitely want to hear about that. But first, tell us where you were today, and we'll
Yeah.
definitely get some questions in.
Yes, today I was at the Central Brooklyn Economic Development Corporation out in Brownsville. And
Go Brownsville!
Brownsville get overshadowed by Bed-Stuy and East New York because of all of the things that go out there. But to see the work that the community is doing there, and Sister LaShawn Allen Muhammad, the wife of the imam of the mosque, where her husband is one of the student minister under the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. And they do an extraordinary job. And the Muslim community turned out today, but the community turned out. This celebration started, and it was a teach-in at about 11 a.m., and it's still going on. And when I I got there about 11, I left at about 3, and people were still coming in. They were serving hot meals to the community at the same time. They had multiple speakers talking about collective work and responsibilities and talking about the projects that this was out at 69 Belmont Avenue. And they were talking about the projects they have planned for Belmont. We were in one of the facilities that was already underway, and multiple other chefs from other restaurants, African American, African Caribbean restaurants in Brooklyn have come together to collaborate to create a restaurant corridor and on Belmont, and to change the name of Belmont, because like I said, we don't know who Belmont is, but this is the Black community now. And so we need to put a name that represents those who have worked to create what's there. And what was clear, and I love the fact that they made it clear, because we are sometimes so absorbed by the religious philosophy of our oppressors, even when we abandon the institutions or we try to transform them, we keep too much of them as a part of how we make our decisions, like loving thy enemy. Now, that may be cool for some people, but that ain't cool for me. And it does not make any sense in any form of African situations I've seen where you love. Love is something very important, because when you love, you emulate and imitate. And so you can't love your enemy, emulate and imitate it at the same time, and then build something for yourself that is in opposition to that enemy's destruction of who you are. And so we've got to make clear that the people in our communities across the world, is not just America, across the African world, most of them who run the restaurants in Africa don't look like us. When I go to Accra, Ghana, a significant amount of the people who control in the hotels don't look like us. That's running the bed and breakfast don't look like us. And running the restaurants don't look like us. And this is on the continent. So we really know what's happening over here in America. So how do we deal with that? Last year spending $1.8 trillion, most of it with people who do not look like us, do not care about us, do not live with us, do not invest with us. And when the sun go down, like Malcolm X says, that money go to another part of town. And we have to stop being silent about this. Oh, we all third world. No, I ain't in no third world. I ain't never been in one. Oh, we all people of color. No, that's not how relationships is formed. Okay. If you exploit me, I don't care what color you are. You are an exploiter. You are a colonizer. You are an oppressor. And we have to try to make that clear. If we're going to be able to do what all human beings must do to survive as a species of any sort, provide food, clothing, shelter, safety, and security for yourself and your families. If you cannot do that, you may as well be reduced to the level, no, I won't say the level of animal, because all animals do that. So I don't know what this level is we're going to be reduced to, because all animals provide food, clothing, shelter, safety, and security for their families. Somehow the Africans have been so warped by slavery, colonialism, imperialism, that we've forgotten that that is the primary instinct of any species, human, animal, bird, or fish, to provide food, clothing, shelter, safety, and security for yourself and your kind. That means you must control the economics, the politics, and culture where you live, on that block you live on, in that community you live in that neighborhood you live in. You must control the economic, politics, and culture. That means you must find a methodology of approach to get control of real estate, land, labor, meaning the labor of your people, and resources, meaning the resources of your people that is now being spent with those who do not invest with you, do not hire you, do not even respect you, but thrive off of owning retail and hotel businesses in your community. So when we talk about collective work and responsibility, we need to get serious, because it's not just a cliche.
So I wanna pop in about that. Now there, of course, there are, let's say, some documents that are being circulated that will direct how we are to educate ourselves. And we have done a grand work in pulling the pieces together. Let me just say it like that. Let me start off by saying pulling the pieces together, whether it be Saturday schools. And this is not just now, of course, it's not a new thing. You know, we've been doing this for a bit. There are lots of African centered educational spaces that have been around since, if we want to say it like this, the year of the flood. And with the impending shift in leadership, that a number of those people and places and organizations and community centers will will continue, not have to, will continue to step up their work and their efforts in order to bring, you know, people together in order to continue the education, that the education and not the training. So shout out to my big brother who said, you know, you went to college, you were trained, now it's time for you to get your education. And my little 21-year-old mind had a big argument saying, I just paid all this money for this education. He goes, no, 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 no. You got trained.
All
Now,
jobs, all
right.
jobs are apprenticeship. Even doctors have to apprentice after medical school.
Correct.
Lawyers apprentice after law school. And usually you're apprenticing under people who did not go to college. You know,
Correct.
you're
And
apprenticing under people who have this set of experiences over time that is essential for you to carry out the skills and tooling that you've gotten. I'm not opposed to any kind of higher education because that's where you get the skills and the tooling. All right. Because education is to bring something inside of you out, but you must have certain skills and certain tools to bring that thing out. Right. And so when we come back to our communities, first we have to come back to our communities. See, one of the problems that we've had, especially since the 60s, is we get a degree and that becomes a passport to move away from the community. Okay. We have to say, we went to get these degrees. That's what we dreamt of, my generation, when we were fighting to open the universities, that we would get the degrees and come back and transform our community. Well, that hasn't happened in the significant way it should have happened. It has happened in some instances. And we're against a lot of brutal forces of gentrification, of state terrorism, where they ran freeways through our communities and they just tore our communities apart across the country. And this was government forces where we couldn't do anything about it, taking our land by eminent domain and not paying us anything for it, and you know, just creating havoc in the Black community from up and down the eastern seaboard across the Midwest. And we haven't really had an answer to it. We're just beginning to realize somebody did something terrible in the 60s and the 70s. Well, it started in the 50s with the freeways, destroying the Black community in Miami, destroying the Black community in South Carolina, destroying the Black community in Detroit, destroying the Black community in the Bronx, running freeways just right on through our communities. The US government and the state governments with our tax monies. And we didn't know how to respond to that because we didn't understand what that was. But it has caused quite a crisis in our community, and it destroyed our voting blocks, split us up. So our blocks that would have allowed us to elect an official whom we wanted, now we're so subdivided, we have to ally with other ethnic groups who don't have our best interests at heart in order to get someone elected to national office or state office. And then we have to teach our people and study. If you live in America, stop saying, I ain't no American. If you live here and you work here and you pay taxes here and you must follow the laws here, and if you're going to survive, you better know the laws here. Yes, you're an American. So stop lying to yourself. Okay. Otherwise, go to JFK, go to LaGuardia, buy yourself a plane ticket back home to the Caribbean or to Africa. All right.
one
And
way.
and most times when you get there, you find you still ain't home because the same people that's controlling the economics in the community in Bed-Stuy and in Brownsville is controlling the economics in Kingston and Accra. And so the same plan must put in place. Do for self, like Elijah Muhammad said, what others are begging for. Yeah. And that starts with getting control of the economic, politics, and culture where you live in order to provide food, clothing, shelter, safety, and security for you and your family. That means you've got to get control of some land, labor, and resources. We can't even practice collective work and responsibility unless those 9 things are our primary goals.
I agree. I agree. I agree. So we started to discuss how, and for the record, if people don't know, I'm an educator, and so I wear my "What Teachers Do" hat. Some people see me post with a hashtag "What Teachers Do," and we're under attack. I'll say that nicely. We're under attack of things that can be said, things that should not be said, things that we dare not consider even saying, and it's important again for us to make our stand of these are good practices. This is curricula. I don't mind saying this because I just say it. So my students, I teach fourth grade during the day. I do some other things at night, but I teach fourth grade during the day. And I love teaching fourth grade because it has to do with the history of the land that we now call the United States. And I always want to make an impact pertaining to the teaching of the indigenous people of this land.
We have to figure out who they are first, too.
So, and our curriculum, New York City, I'm New York City, it's cut, right? It's this what we give. So I make very simple shifts within staying in the curriculum. And so two things that I do when I take my plans, I'll rewrite and I'll take out the word Native American and I just say indigenous people. And then I start talking about, so my students never say day one. See that word that's there? I can't erase that, but this is what we're going to say. We're going to say indigenous people. And then I talk about what indigenous means. Second thing is when we discuss anyone who is no longer living, right? There are many words for it, but no longer living. I say these are ancestors. So when I say, when you're going to research someone, and I want you to find out their date of arrival to this earth and then their date of transition, right? I don't use the DEAD word. And so the other day, one of my students comes and says, Miss Laria, so here's this information on this person. I said, well, is the person now an ancestor? And at first he forgot that I had just said it. And he goes, well, I don't know. I said, well, go find out. And then he comes back, he goes, and I said, well, it's still blank. And I said, why? He said, oh, because the person is not an ancestor yet. They're still here. I said, there you go. Excellent. So there are tiny shifts that, we can make in order to sort of bring this information and this knowledge together. So on the basis of bringing groups of people together, and I do know I have some people again in Newbie who are here. Thank you. I see you, Sean. Family, I see you. That there are book clubs going on. There are study groups going on, and we're really going to have to make it 100. Hey, greetings. Also, Brother Ron Green says, my aunt Hotep family in Baba Small. Excellent. Thank you, Brother Ron Green. And so these book clubs, these study groups, where you can bring it into larger spaces, because of course we have to be informed, and however we can be informed. But then if you're a part of a church group, if you're a part of a mosque or, a community center, what have you, and bringing it to the younger people. You said something very interesting about how, let's say when I made a comment about like going to school and then feeling like I've gotten education and my big brother was like, no, you've gotten trained. I think it's really wise now, and because now I know more, to tell young people when they're going in, whether or not it's going to bloom, when they're going into, let's say, higher education. And when I say higher education, I know that college is not for everyone. But as you're leaving middle school, I know I'm going to do my part by saying, when you finish middle school, when you finish high school, you are then going to go through another set of information getting. Sit at the feet of some elders in your community and try to teach someone else. Here's a book. You're not going to be given it in school, but take it and try to share it with someone else. We do have a lot of people doing that. We do have a lot of people doing
Mhm.
that. If you can, grab some of these young people and take them to these Kwanzaa celebrations, which, who is it? Shout out to Brother Asar Imhotep, who does a lot of hieroglyphic work.
Mhm.
He Mbongi. That's one of the words that he uses for like a teaching. He does a really, really great work at having these teaching sessions on YouTube. Shout out to him, and because this YouTube University is amazing to sort of fill the gaps so that we can have. I don't believe everybody needs to have a podcast or a show, but if you know how to do something, put it somewhere that people can get access to it. Because even though we are an oral tradition, even though we are an oral, community, somehow there needs to be an archive. And I know the work that thank you so much, Barbara Small, for coming on. That I'm trying to create this archive of work so that people can access it. So I'm at this moment, I know there's a number of people in a couple of different places who are watching. If there's information that you are interested in and participating in and adding to, an archive of, in smaller bits that young people can access. Because if my students can tell me the other day, hey, Miss Larry, we follow you on TikTok. I was like, what? First of all, I'm not even on TikTok. Why are you? How? But then they found that I have this channel. And I said, well, so how can I now use that? Small drips, right? Small piece of information to give them information that they will not get in the classroom. So I'm imploring people who are watching. I elicited my family. Hey, mom, I see you. I elicited my extended community family to let's read some stories that students probably won't get access to and read it in our vernacular. Like right now, I'm just sort of dropping information. If
Mhm.
you feel like you have a good voice, get some black books and just read them, because nobody can say that you can't read it. And if you have your own platform, read it aloud so children can hear it in our voices. I, as an educator, I actually have to comb through videos of books that are being read aloud of Black and African and diasporic families and information with other voices. And we know how we talk. You can't read Brer Rabbit with a voice that doesn't understand Brer Rabbit or Anansi. Do you understand what I mean? So it's just an
Mhm.
opportunity for other people to think sort of like, not necessarily outside of the box, but how can we bring more of the work that we already do to a wider variety of people? Of course, you start where you are, but there are other places and spaces that it can happen as well. So I just needed to share that part. I need to share that part.
No, that's beautiful. And we need to deal with this medium that is called social media, like it's something floating out in space and stuff. There was a time we did not have automobiles.
Hmm.
We have them now and we use them. There was a time we did not fly on aeroplanes. We have them now and we fly on them. Okay. There was a time we did not have cell phones. We have them now and we use it to communicate with. The social media that involved multiple types of mediums to spread and gather information. Um, it is just another tool that the technocracy of the day have brought before us. And if we know what our objectives are, then we automatically know how to use the technology to meet that objective. The problem is we have one of the most trained group of peoples on the earth, especially among the Africans in North America. What is it we are trained for? We are trained to do everything this technocratic society demands. What we are not trained to do is to do it for ourselves as an African group. That's what's missing. So we become a doctor and we like to say we are a doctor. But we don't have any institutions like certain people. We think they go into worship, but they go into discuss how to build their community in their places of worship. We go to our place of worship to praise God. Now, people got all their ways and means of praising God, and that's cool. But if you're praising God, and in your praising God process, and you're praying to God, and most of the institutions in our community are religious ones. Most of the collectively owned real estate are religious ones. Most of the place where the masses of our people, the largest percentage and numbers of our people gather in the course of any week, any month, any year are the religious ones. Most of the places where our attention is 100% for hours at a time are the religious ones. Those are the perfect environment to transform consciousness, and it is not happening in a significant way. When we have more of these institutions than most communities. So something is wrong that our intent and content is not connected, or our content do not know what our intent should be. Okay, so how do we get there? And that's where we come back to all of this stuff about history and ethnicity, because if we don't get that part of the intent correct, we can have all the content in the world, and we do. If you extract from America, just over the last 100 years, the technocratic inventions of Africans, America would not exist. It would be a swamp technologically. It wouldn't be a third world country, it'd be a fifth world country. Okay? So if we can make that much contribution, why isn't that reflected in the wealth and development of the African community? Because our intent is not hooked up to our content. And I think our intent will get hooked up to our content when we understand the history of our ancestry, because that's the only thing that will explain to you what your intent should be.
So let me. I want to ask about that, and I'm actually going to pull up a comment by my brother, who we spent a whole week plus in Kemet just absorbing all of the things that we didn't even realize we could actually touch. So I'm very blessed about that. I'm going to pull it up for a moment and then read a part of it. So this is Brother Sean. Thank you, Brother Sean. It says, Sister Doriel, can you ask Baba Smalls what he feels, what we need to do differently as a collective to survive and thrive with T. Rump going back into office? And I said what I said.
Read that again. I didn't get the last line.
That's okay. Here we go. What we need to do differently as a collective to survive and thrive with the new leadership going back into office.
Well, the one thing, we pay too much attention to something that pays no attention to us, because the leadership of Biden and his team for 8 years in office, what did we get from them that we will not be expecting from Trump? You know, tell me, what was the advantage of having the Democrats in power over the last 4 years, or go past Trump's first term and the last 8 years? Because we have been programmed to look at these institutional construct of politics as having a role in our lives that they really don't have. And we wait for them to deliver something that they've never been able to deliver. And we keep repeating that cycle over and over again. What we have to do is study history. History says all politics are local. That's not just a cliche, and it isn't just something that just started being said. If you cannot control the school board in your community, then you cannot control the education of your children. If you're not able to control the education of your children, you are not in charge of your future, nor their safety, nor their development. Okay. If you cannot control the board, which is called in New York, they call it URLIP. It's the land use control, the land use board. All of the cities have them. And it's the community thing. But you've got to get elected to the land use to determine, does a housing project go here? Or do a warehouse go here? Or do a mental facility go here? Or do a hospital go here? Or do a homeless shelter go here? That decision is made by someone on a board in your community that you could have gotten elected to. Okay. If you cannot get on the city council that distributes the tax revenues to your community and community agencies and service agencies and not-for-profit agencies that serve your community, if you're not in their control in that city council, then the not-for-profit agencies run by one group, which may not be your group, can cipher off the wealth that should have been sent to your group. If you don't understand how local politics work, politics have one job: to manage the economy, to distribute the wealth in an economy, to make the rules and policy to govern how you relate to the wealth in that community. And if you take the position, I'm not going to vote, I'm not going to be a part of the political machinery, then you have already acquiesced. You've already committed political suicide. And so it is incumbent upon our leadership, when we are talking about history, let's take it out of the mystery zone. Yes, we did all those great things, but we got our butts kicked. We lost Africa. We lost Kemet. We lost Ghana. We lost Nigeria. We lost South Africa. Let's examine what we did wrong. Yes, we should examine all the great things we did before we got beat up and thrown out of our own lands. So what it is that we did wrong, because we obviously are still doing the same thing, because we're in the same situation. And that's what the study of history should do. The history simply is about economic politics, culture, and spirituality. Those four elements: economic, politics, culture, and spirituality. Those four elements. What is it that we should be doing in understanding how those four elements should work so that we can provide the food, clothing, shelter, safety, and security? So we who live in Brownsville can own Brownsville. So we who live in East New York can own East New York. So we who live in Detroit, 77 something percent, and we run around in poverty. How do you go run around in poverty while you're spending billions of dollars a year? You must be making it, but you're spending billions of dollars a year with other ethnic groups who are clear on how they're going to survive. They are clear on the intent of their content. We're not clear on the intent of our content because we're not even clear that we deserve to see ourselves as a group worthy of survival.
Because this is the end of the year, and it's not just because it's Kwanzaa time. Pardon?
I'm not going to mess with you. I was going to say what year? It's not the end of my year, but whatever year is ending.
The Gregorian calendar.
It's up there that
Yes.
year.
So
history erases the mystery.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. A number of people during this period of this year go through like reflection and then trying to plan for next year. And I've already seen a number of videos called like a no spend month. If anybody spends any time on these YouTube streets, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. And so some people, let's say within our own community, will say not just I'm going to spend money, let's say with Black businesses, but I'm going to go on a no spend. Now, of course, let me be gentle. If you have more credit card debt than you have money coming in, I would suggest that more of us exercise that. But more so, like how are we using the money that we do have? Okay. So on a simple level, yes, let's make sure our houses are taken care of before. This is just me. If y'all want to yell at me, that's quite all right. Before we go take some vacation, let's try to look at the bigger picture, because if we're going to leave money for our children, if we're going to invest, if we're going to have insurance policies or whatever, like let's make sure that stuff is straight. And if it is, great. As we're teaching our children how we're like our spending habits and our spending patterns and like what is important and what we should focus on, I think it's really interesting that we continue to shift narratives of what we may have learned from our families. And I know, and Mama, I love you, but our conversations about money were very, very, I don't remember how they happened. I remember you cannot spend $1 if you only have 99 cents. I remember that. I remember that. I remember, like my mother and my father sort of taking care of two different types of spending in the household. My dad, I know, took care of like the rent, and I believe my mom took care of like the groceries and some other stuff. It was very interesting just, watching, and I'm an only child, like watching how that plays out. I'm always interested in how we grow the traditions of responsibility and of learning from each other to our children. So I know I intentionally said to my children, hey, I want you to know I didn't necessarily do a lot of investments when I was younger because we didn't have those conversations. But I want you to be able to know these are things that you can do with money. Here are bank accounts that you should have. I know I had a bank account when I was like 5 years old. I remember taking my little quarters around the Dime Savings Bank in Flatbush. I grew up in Flatbush, still live in it. And I remember those conversations. I want more people to have those conversations with their children. And if you already do, that's great. But some of us don't. And so our children are in this, I'm holding up my phone, and this like everything comes from here. Someone said to me the other day, like, I don't even write checks because everyone lives in this e-wallet world. And I'm just wondering, how are we transferring this information about what we used to do and what worked to our younger people so that they continue to know, so that they continue to grow, so that they make wiser decisions than we did based on what we knew. And if we know all of this, it's very interesting how we're kind of still economically in like a hard way to go. And I'm mentioning that because you're talking about, how are you, not just how you're going to feed yourself, but how are you looking at like the global picture? How, because I still think to an extent, but because I've traveled, I have a different perspective. There's still like it's not my problem because it's over there. That's when I was raised, it was like, well, that's their issue. It's not really my issue. But when I've gone to Kemet during this year, when I went to South Africa, when I went to Ghana, even though I say I'm a child of African ancestry, or I'm an African American, or I'm a descendant of Africans, that term is almost like a title. It's like almost like a hat that I can put on and take off. Those people who, like yourself and many, 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 many others, who are more married and committed to that. Like, I know you tell me about the place in Ghana that you hold on to. Just the commitment is different. The commitment is different. And so when I'm bringing that up, because when people like yourself take on this other role of, it's not them, it's us, I just happen to live here, then the translation of that information to our young people can be different. Because not until I was grown, did I know, oh, there are actually people of African ancestry who live in America, born, raised 2, 3, 4 generations, who actually went back and said, I can live there as well. Because in my family, it was like, why would we go back? And so I'm saying I'm proud that you are part of that generation that says it's us. And if we do it together, then there is no us and them.
But let me say something. We've always done that. Then we come back to history, erase the mystery. Liberia wasn't an invasion by Black people of indigenous Africans. The myth and the lies about Liberia need to be straightened out so we can stop the mess. Those people were going home, and then most of them went voluntarily. They were not the enslaved African population. This was the free Black population in America who had some choice. Okay? White folks wanted to get them out because they didn't want a free Black population in America to grow so big they may rebel to try to free the ones who was in slavery. So if we study the history of a Liberia, we study the history of a Sierra Leone. Another exercise, there was returns to Ghana and to Nigeria. 1800, Martin Delaney is going to Nigeria, to Abeokuta, to get the land to take all of us back home. That process has always been a part of our culture, and it has been a collective part because Delaney didn't go on his own because he didn't have that kind of money. His church community raised that money. Okay, when Booker T. Washington had the conference on to on the app on the Negro world before the boys and others did a Pan African conference. Africans came from Nigeria, from Ghana, Malawi, South Africa, and many of the men who came end up leading the freedom movements in Africa. We've always understood the connection of going back. That is the part we need to expand on. But where we are weak is to have all of these institutions, the church being the center of it. You can't run away from it because you're 90% of where our people go to worship God. So you can't run from that. If we go into certain, and we can't call their name because they like to attack people and say you call it their names. When you look at certain community, their identity and their religion is one. And we haven't developed that. So we got these institutions that we pay 10% of our salary to that don't seem to have an obligation to the collective responsibility of teaching to the children exactly what you're talking about, because you can't do it as individual families. 40 million families will not individually do that in any significant way, though a few will. That's why you create institutions. So collectively, the things you were talking about banking and finance, could be transferred intergenerationally to the next generation. Otherwise, what do you need the institution for? To go and have a dance show that you call worship, which is dancing to music and clapping and enjoying and having a thing all day and having some food and meeting some friends. Because God didn't come down and have no conversation with nobody, you know. And I'm not going to be nice about it, because reality is reality. We're dying. We're in genocide. Genocide is real. Because we don't see arms falling off, we don't consider genocide. What's happening in the prisons of America every day to the Black youth that is happening to, that Angola could still exist as a prison in America and is worse than any concentration camp in Germany, and we don't even mention the word Angola, that we sit back and not understand how to construct neighborhoods and communities. That's where our weaknesses are. If you construct it, you've got to have some kind of institution, whether it's the mosque, whether it's the Hebrew Israelite temple, whether it's the Moorish Science temple, whether it's the Christian church, whatever the institution is, the reason you construct that institution is to socialize your people. Now, if you're not socializing your people to provide food, clothing, shelter, and safety, if you're not socializing them around the ethical, moral principles that will govern their behavior so they don't end up in a penitentiary or end up the victim of rape and molestation because you don't choose the wrong group to go hang out with in the community. And these are demon consciousness that's going to kill you, if not destroy you, and wish you were dead. We've got to get serious about what's happening. Every time I turned on my phone, pick up my phone and pick up Facebook, my child is missing. My 14-year-old is missing. My 10-year-old is missing. My 12-year-old is missing. Then you got a picture of them dressed like they work for the local strip joint. Okay, so let's be real.
Can I ask a question? Now, I know there are a number of people who are watching. I'm between a rock and a hard place. I'm between a rock and a hard place. You really just hit a nail on the head. And I struggle with this because as a woman, as a Black woman, yes, I do understand that people should be able to don whatever they feel comfortable in that makes them feel comfortable. I support that. I sorry, I'm not trying to put a finger up at you, but with a caveat. Thank you, Mama, for raising me to think this. When you walk down the street, people will make a comment and they can say what they like. They could say what they like based on what you have on. I am not going to put myself into a situation where I'm going to draw attention to myself in such a way that it will hinge my safety. I'm I'm not going to do that. Nor if I'm walking with a brother, and I say this to my sons. I say, if you're walking with a young lady and she has on something that could possibly put you into a dangerous situation because somebody will make a comment and she's looking to you to defend her, stand up for her, or what have you, you might want to think about that connection with that person. Um, I'm concerned that some of our what we're sharing with our young ladies, and I'm wincing as I say this because I have some sister friends, I have some probably extended family members who may say, hey, I can wear what I want. Yeah, you can. But are you also ready for the comments or the approaching of people who are not necessarily there just to compliment you nicely? And it's of concern. It's just of such concern to me because as we're trying to raise trying to raise young girls, and I belong to an organization that elevates and supports and develops and mentors young girls, young women, and shout out to National Council of Negro Women, which I'm very proud to be a member of. Um, we're trying to do what we can to establish and develop and polish a moral character in our young women. And I'm always like teetering on, what kind of attention is that going to bring you? Oh, people shouldn't be saying anything. Why are you wearing it? What's the intention that you're trying to bring? What's the commentary that you're trying to bring? Are you ready for that? Do you just want to yell at people because they're making a comment about something because you're showing skin? I'm not saying, I'm not saying everyone should wear, what is that word, mama? A crocus sack, I think, or a
Mhm.
potato sack. I'm not telling people, you remember that word, right?
Oh, I know the crocus act thing.
Right.
But
I'm not saying that, but it's just
remember
a concern of
collective,
mine. Say it again.
the word collective.
Right.
We are not a bunch of individuals, but African Americans especially have bought into the individual syndrome.
Hmm.
And even though we own and we are part of institutions that should be collective in terms of the socialization process. And let me say what I mean by socialization, how we get our values, our interests, and our principle. That's what Dr. Leonard Jeffries told us. Our values, interests, and principle come from our socialization process. Our socialization process is governed by the institutions in our communities and society that informs and instructs us on our values, interests, and principles. And so we need to get a little bit more serious. We do have the institution. We don't have to build no new ones. We need to get the institutions we have to get the intentions of because what we're doing, we're creating human beings. We're creating adults. What is the intention in creating this human being? What is the intentions in creating this adult? What content should go into these people in order to fulfill the intent? And that discussion doesn't seem to happen well. We've got some of the most fantastic edifice in the world as institutions, and yet we seemed surprised in Florida the other day when the churches finally said, we will open our doors to teach our children our history. How insane. Same thing with the mosques. It's irresponsible not to have had that as your first priority to begin with, you see. And so we need to really kind of talk about what is it we trying, because the I'm 79 years old. I'll be out of here in a minute, right? I'll be
You're not
gone.
going anywhere.
So
You're not
yeah,
going.
I'll be gone in a minute, folks. Okay. Like my brother and my uncle, my daddy, my mama and them, they cool. They're with me and I'm with them, but they gone from this physical space. So that time between when I was 5 or 6 and this 79 happened so quickly, so fast, that we have to, the way we need to slow it down is the collective work and responsibility that give clear intent to our informational content. How do I build a neighborhood? First, what is the definition of a neighborhood when we talk about collective work and responsibility? The definition of a neighborhood is a group of people who usually speak the same language, usually practice the same religion, and usually from the same ethnic or racial group, living in the same geographical space. That's a neighborhood. But then a community is that same definition. What is added to the community? You own the land, labor, and resources in the neighborhood. That's what makes it your community. So if you're in these neighborhoods and you don't own the land, labor, and resources, that is not your community. That is the community of the people who own the land, labor, and resources, control the economic, politics, and culture. So now our intent should be cleared. Our intent is we've got to get control of economic, politics, and culture where we live. Now, to get control of that, we have to also make sure we must secure real estate or land, labor, and resources. To do that, we must make sure we're in charge of the socialization process and that aspect of socialization which we call education. Because education is only one piece of the socialization. And so those kinds of intent must be made clear. When we do the overview stuff like the history of the ancestors and the great accomplishment, that is for inspiration and transformation. But the intent must be clear for what am I inspiring and transforming a person for? You know. And so then we get back to collective work and response. That word collective is missing in our community in an enormous way. That word is missing in an enormous way. And we have to try to find a way to bring that word back. And I saw some of that today with the collective over in Brooklyn, where you had all of these entrepreneurs who were restaurateurs in other parts of Brooklyn saying, let's come together in this part of Brooklyn, in this place called Brownsville, and let's build our facilities together here. Where we got carpenters, we have plumbers, we have welders, we have roofers. We need to sit down and say, wait a minute, why when I pick up my telephone and I said I need roofing work done, everybody shows up at my door except an African person. I need plumbing. Everybody shows up at my door on my phone, on my computer, except an African person. So that begs the question. We must rearrange our intent. How do we get it so that when I say I need a roofer, I know where to call or go and have an African person show up at my door? Sorry.
Sorry, there we go. On the note, and look in that side chat, Professor Small, for the message for you. Those of you who are in the chat, and again, there are a couple of people, there's like, I don't know, like 15 or so currently on YouTube, but then we're also on 2 Facebook pages, which I can't see at this second. If you are an entrepreneur, or if you have worked for a business, Black owned primarily, or more than 50%, let's put it like that, then please do so and drop it in the chat. If you are connected, of course, with Baba Professor Small, or connected with myself or this community right here, we would love to definitely share your information so that we can have, more of a Rolodex. Who remembers a Rolodex? Who remembers like the little black book we used to have, right?
To your people to know that you exist.
Say it again, sir.
More exposure, more avenues of exposure.
Precisely.
I certainly use everything I've got to help promote you. And
yes, the Baba he will shout you out. He will put you. Listen, he dressed up in a beautiful like martial arts outfit the other day, and I saw that, and he was just saying, hey, I give honor to my sensei. He's always making sure that people.
And the calls came flooding in. Sensei called me this morning saying everybody's calling me, so the dojo is going to be full when we open up in 2 weeks.
I love it.
Room in the church bay, and we're in the basement of a church of Mother Zion AME on 134th. Was that 34? 36, right?
Mother Amy Zion. I'll find it.
Yeah, between 7th and 8th, right on the block right behind Abyssinia. So
Excellent.
that's where we on every Saturday morning. We're in there, and because I'm the elder, everybody's told don't kick him on his knees. You can kick him above his knees.
Protect Baba. Protect him at all costs. Excellent. So yeah, that's definitely what I want to make sure that here on this platform we do as well. That and I love talking to people. I love interviewing people and giving them an opportunity to shine. And if you shine it in your own corner, come on my side of the street. come on my side of the street and let me, get have you have some more exposure. So we are going to start just to wind this up just a little bit. It doesn't mean that this conversation with Baba is over because there's always the after party. Let me tell you something. The after party is always like almost like juicier than the actual show. So if y'all want the after party, that's a whole other conversation we'll talk about in 2025. But for the people who are still here, I have my own personal goal, and 2025 has to be the year because I can't shuck and jive about this. I'm an educator by trade, right? I'm a talker and connector by passion and discipleship. And so part of my goal is to continue to build this archive, but this archive of information and of resources in my mind, help me out, y'all. In my mind is going to be very short snippets. The short snippets is like I can continue with Baba for another hour or two and it seemed like nothing, right? But there's because of certain people's attention span, I want to make sure that we have maybe like a playlist of, hey, we're just going to talk about this one particular thing, and there are some other communities that do similarly, but if you're not in other communities and you get it here, that's perfectly fine. And so if it is, I'm a teacher, and so I want to put together like some book lists, not just book lists of things that adults will read, but book lists that children need to hear in very short snippets. So I'm actually sort of doing like a little call for people who like to read aloud and are comfortable with that, because I really believe that stories that are written about us and for us should be written in or spoken of in our voices. That's one thing. Another thing is I have a health and wellness, love and passion. And so I'm always looking for additional people to be on the show just to sort of talk about things that are in bite-sized pieces, and that's literal and figurative, so that people can absorb it. I said years ago, do we really want to, excuse me, let me not say it like this. Some people don't have the bandwidth to listen to something for 2 hours, but some people have the bandwidth to listen to something for maybe 5 to 7 to 10 minutes. Doesn't mean that everything needs to be that short, but that's just something that I'm interested in doing. And so whether it is, oh, I see a comment, whether it is social, here we go. Hey, greetings, Brother Alfred. Yes. Thank you, Brother Alfred Phillips. Reverend Alfred Phillips, high school GED alternative for our community. Absolutely. Yes. And so that definitely needs to be, and we were, discussing that. You're right. College is not for everyone, but the information that is available, like, yes, we need HVAC folk, because I refuse to be cold, right? We need farmers. And so I refuse to eat things out of a can. We need the dentist. We need everybody. We need people. Why aren't there any more shoemakers or like shoe repair places? I don't know. I'm just asking. A random thought. But my point is, moving in 2025, I would like to collectively bring together more people. And if you share this information on other live stream shows or podcasts or what have you, send more people this way so that we can share this information as well. That is my goal, is to expand, is to make things more bite-sized. Learning this AI space is very interesting. If you're already in it, that's great. If you're not, let's learn it together. If I don't know the information, I will find out who does and want to share it with you and for you. I'll do some live demos of things that I know that I kind of think are rudimentary and that are very, very basic. But for some people, they're like, get out of town. You actually can get a computer to do that. Yeah, you can. So we're here together. We're here to do this work together. I appreciate you greatly. I appreciate you greatly, Baba, as I always do. Thank you so much for taking out time from literally running the streets and coming almost to Flatbush. You almost made it to Flatbush, but you were in Brownsville.
I'll make it to Flatbush, but I also want to again shout out to the community in Brownsville, because they're doing what we said. That Central Brooklyn Economic Development Corporation, we need to duplicate it wherever we can. Brooklyn is probably the largest African community in America. You're talking about a couple of million people. Brooklyn is larger than many African countries, larger than many Caribbean countries. So it is a big piece of real estate with a massive amount of African peoples with every skill conceivable. And we have a lot of wealth. Let's be clear, we're not a poor people. Some of the wealthiest communities in America are African communities. You know, whether we're talking about Maryland, upstate New York, we're talking about Long Island, we're talking about Southern California, we're to some of the wealthiest communities in America are really African peoples. We have to figure out how to have even the wealthiest community lack the consciousness to do the things we were talking about today. They're brilliant people. They're brilliant business people. They're brilliant entrepreneurs. They're brilliant professional people. And they've built these wealthy, wealthy communities all over America. I'm talking about communities where 50% to 55% is African people and the income is above $100,000. There's multiple communities like that across America. Nobody talks about them because it's so much easier to talk about the little poverty ridden 10, 20 blocks, you know, or to demean the housing that happen to be subsidized by calling them projects, as though people don't live with the same ethic, morals, and principles that people who may live, you know, in an apartment building with a balcony. You live in an apartment building without a balcony, and somehow there's something wrong with you because we're not controlling the narrative when it comes to explaining what our communities are about, which is another part of our struggle. And that's what I like what you're doing. You're trying to get control of that narrative and make sure that the information reflects the reality of the African community when we talk to the rest of the world.
Baba, I'm going to give you about 2 minutes. Tie some of our conversation up. You know, I needed to do one
Yes,
thing,
ma'am.
and I will see. We'll come right back. Okay.
Okay. Well, we're talking about collective work and responsibility. And in discussing this element of Kwanzaa, which we should be doing throughout the year, we should talk about food, clothing, shelter, and safety for our people in our communities. And the fact that that means we must get control of economic politics and culture where we live. We must get control of land, labor, and resources where we live. That means we must teach, instruct, and inform the consciousness of those who have the skills to do this. We have to learn how to control the politics wherever we are. Control the school board, control the land use board, control the city council, control any other not for profit organization. If it's not in your community and owned by you and run by you, it should not be serviced in any way for your community. Let them go to their ethnic community and set up their not for profits and extract tax money for their people. That's fine. We need to make sure that the tax money that we're bringing in our community is employing the people in our community, giving service to the people in our community. So that's your money that got taken out of your paycheck. That's not the government money. They're not giving handouts to anybody. They're returning something to you that was extracted via some tax process from you. And so we need to be clear on those basic kinds of things as we talk about collective work and responsibility for the purpose of building neighborhoods, communities, families, and individual character.
I think the final question, which everyone should leave this conversation with, is what are you doing in your own place, in your own space, on your own block, in order to pull together the collective genius and make your community a little bit better than it was yesterday? I think that's where we should sort of lead this conversation with. To those people who are here, who are still here with us an hour later, I love you dearly. This is an amazing opportunity to sit again with one of our heroes of our day. And you do not look 79. I will see you for another many, 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 many months and years. Don't even try to leave here any sooner. We're blessed to have you. Please share this information. If you're still watching live, great. If you want to ask Baba any questions, you can drop them in the chat. And even if they are this is on the replay, he has a connection to this. And last time you were on, I think a couple of days or maybe a couple of days, maybe like say 2 weeks or so, we were actually up to like 1,000 views on this
Hmm.
show. So
Very good.
make sure it continues to circulate. This focuses on collective work and responsibility on the third principle of Kwanzaa, which is Ujima. We can't do it alone. We need everybody's help. And everyone doesn't have to do big things. Just do your thing. Just do your thing. And we can do it together. So I want to thank you so much, Baba.
Thank you, Sister Dorian, for the opportunity to just share.
Excellent, excellent. So peace and blessings, everyone. Happy Kwanzaa. Tomorrow is Ujima. Tomorrow is Ujima. Please stay tuned. Set your notifications on YouTube, and we may have another. Everyone who comes on here is amazing. We'll probably have another amazing person come and sit in the space and discuss Ujima cooperative economics, and this brother right here, this Baba right here, is all about pulling people together. And so tomorrow's conversation will be about getting our economics right, not just our pennies and our quarters, right? But it's getting also our mindset about not just who we are here, but who we are globally, and how in the next couple of weeks and months we need to rethink how we think about economics. So until then, peace and blessings. This is a Learn to Grow You moment where I plant seeds to help you grow. I'm very blessed and honored to be in a space where I can bring people like Baba, Professor Small together for you. See you in 2025, if not tomorrow. Good night, everyone.
Peace and blessings.